Sean Dustin spent time in federal and state prison for drug trafficking and fraud. Upon release in 2006, he had nothing but the clothes on his back, a bag of mail, and legal paperwork. In 2010, he kicked a long-time methamphetamine habit and started the long climb back up the ladder of life. This is the Nowhere to Go But Up podcast. If you want transparency and authenticity, you're in the right place. This is the Nowhere to Go But Up podcast, and this is Sean Dustin.
This is the Nowhere to Go But Up podcast, and I'm your host, Sean Dustin. This is your first time listening or watching. Welcome. If you're returning, welcome back. It's good to have you with us. We got a great guest for you today, an international guest for you, actually. She's either from, I can't remember where she's, either New Zealand or Australia. That's my bad. She'll tell us though as soon as she gets here, but she's definitely from down under and has that great accent. Love listening to that accent. So yeah, if you are watching on YouTube, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button and thumbs the video up. If you are on Facebook, like and share this. You know, the algorithm doesn't like to push content unless you're paying them to actually do it for you. So I definitely depend on the listeners to share these things so I can get some visibility out there. I would definitely appreciate it. Also, this is, I think that's about it. I don't have a whole lot. All of the links, the direct links you can find in the description of the show or the show notes if you're listening on the podcast platforms when this does reach there, and that'll be a couple of weeks. My queue is actually getting a little bit longer now. So let's get to the guest, Georgiana Mannion, and she's going to share her story of Nowhere to Go But Up. Through some mental health issues, some trauma, childhood trauma, and all of that kind of stuff that has helped shape who she is and to where she's gone. So let's welcome Georgiana.
Hello. Thank you for having me. This is very exciting. And what an intro as well to a podcast, your like intro music, etc. I felt like rocking out, but I didn't want to mess my hair up for the podcast.
Right. And you are a musician too, and you have your podcast is revolves around music as well, and artists and all of that stuff. So, what are you in Australia? Or are you in New Zealand?
So I'm in Australia, but I'm from England.
Okay.
So I've been in Australia for over 6 years now, but I'm hoping that I don't get the Australian accent. I'm trying to keep my English one.
Yeah, well, all of them that are different. I love all the accents. I feel so basic with my American.
But there's so many American accents. It's very exciting for a foreigner like me to listen to all the different American. So East Coast, West Coast, Middle America, and then people like who are from Minnesota who just sound adorable. And then, it's just, I really enjoy listening to the different accents of America. It's a large place. So there's a lot going on over there.
There definitely is. And you are right about that. There are a lot of different dialects and different accents in this country. So why don't we start with, who are you? What do you do? And your story, what happened, and a little bit of, what you want to share with us, what you're comfortable sharing.
So who I am now is I am a keynote speaker at international conferences. So I've spoken to three different countries now at business conferences, and that's my jam. But I'm also a management consultant, but I'm doing that on my own. I'm an entrepreneur, so I am running my own consultancy in training, facilitation. I do corporate coaching and mentoring, and then I also just generally am a problem solver for hire. So when a company is going through any transition, I can come in and manage that from a analysis through to actually doing people change, and I support people through people change. So that's what I do. But I have my podcast, as you mentioned. The main one is FlawlessAMP, or a music podcast, and that is a deep dive into a particular album that one guest or the host nominates, and then we talk about it for between 45 and 55 minutes, and then at the end we vote whether we believe it is flawless or not. And we've been doing that for over 3 years, and we're on episode 85, and in that time we've only had 8 flawless albums. So we are quite robust in our deep dive of our flawless records, and they have to be flawless for everyone. They can't just be flawless to one person or 2 people, so it has to be unanimous. And of those 8 albums, 3 of them were guests. One of them was one of my co-hosts, and 4 of them were mine. So I'm the winner at the moment amongst my co-hosts, and I don't let them forget it. So yes, so I'm doing that, and I've been a punk rock musician, a folk musician, an indie rock musician. I play guitar, play bass, and I sing. So I've been in lots of bands. One of them was signed to a record label back in the UK, and we used to go on tour and do it all in the punk DIY way, where we crash on people's floors and just like tour and stuff, and get drunk, pass out, wake up in the morning, drive to a new city, and do that on repeat. So it was just really awesome. So I was really lucky to be in a band that people wanted to listen to, and we even had vinyl pressed by a record label. So I have genuine vinyl records of my album, and I've got a couple of copies in Australia. So it's awesome. It's cool. Things are definitely look up in my life as I've gotten older. It's definitely improved. So
yeah, that's great. Vinyl. What is that?
Yeah, and it's what the hipsters use. So hipsters use vinyl. So so I have a vinyl record collection. But the first thing I did was buy up like half of the Billy Joel back catalogue because that reminded me of my childhood, just lots of Billy Joel. But then I've got loads of punk rock. I've got musicals and orchestral music and jazz and like pop stuff and just like a bit of hip hop, and I've got a nice collection of vinyl records, which I love. And I love the process of taking a record out of its sleeve and putting it on the deck, and then pressing play, and then hearing that little crackle at the very beginning of the record, and then at the end when it crackles at the end of the side A, and then you can hear the arm lifting and moving back and clunking down, and there's something really beautiful about that like analog sound that you don't get with other media formats. And I still listen to streaming services mostly, but there's something really beautiful about about going through a vinyl playlist and stuff. It's just it's really gorgeous.
Yeah, Jordan Barnes here says, I love vinyl. Have about 20,000 of them. Wife cut me off.
Oh man, get a new wife. No, I'm joking. Don't do that. That's really bad advice. But I don't have 20K. I definitely only have a few shelves worth, but I still love it. When I grew up, my parents are both musicians, so we had an entire wall of vinyl records, and we had a section of the wall with cassettes, and then when CDs came out, we had a whole section of the wall just dedicated to CDs, and the rest of the walls were all dedicated to books. So I was really like from that perspective, I was exposed to a huge amount of different music growing up, and that was formed my musical taste now, for sure. Which is really good. But they're professional musicians, and neither of them would teach me how to play their instruments, because in their words, they would never teach an amateur. So because I was a kid, and like I didn't know, then they would never teach me how to play, because they were so professional. Like they couldn't lower themselves to teaching their own child how to play their instruments. So I had to teach myself the guitar, and I taught myself the violin. But I didn't know how to tune a violin, so I tuned it like a guitar. And if you know anything, it's that violins are not tuned in the same tuning as a guitar. And I was playing by ear. So because I was playing by ear to music that I was listening to with strings, I would teach myself how to play the violin part to a particular song. And then I think my mother took the violin from me one day, and she said, that's not how it's tuned. So she tuned it properly. But I was like, well, I learned by ear and muscle memory. So now I can't play anything, because I'd forgotten how to do anything, because she tuned it. So I had to tune it back to a guitar and learn it that way. So yeah, it was she judged me for my violin playing, but never actually taught me to play.
Yeah, I wish that I had learned how to play an instrument. I mean, I still can. It's never too late to take up one and learn it. But the guitar always seemed like the one that I'd want to do, just because I love rock music, classic rock, and all of that stuff. Alternative rock, Incubus, and all of those '90s bands like Nirvana and all of that good stuff, man.
Well, I just to upset you, I can play Nirvana and I can play Incubus on the guitar. So, but my main thing was playing Deftones. So I dropped the and used to play a lot of Deftones, because they were my favorite band when I was like a young teenager. But yeah, I obviously learned how to play Nirvana, because that's like a rite of passage when you learn to play the guitar. But I learned to play some Incubus as well, because I saw them live a couple of times, and so I was like obsessed with them.
My favorite.
So we can bond. Look at us, Sean. We're bonding.
Yeah, we're bonding over some Incubus. My favorite song is Drive.
Well, that's the song I can definitely play. There you go. That. Maybe one.
I sing it pretty good.
Okay, so I'll play it and you can sing it, and then we'll do it together on Clubhouse.
Oh no, you got me on the spot here. Yeah, maybe we have to rehearse it though, because I don't want to just come in, because give me a little scared here. But so. Let's not to get off of that, but let's dive into a little bit of your past, because you were homeless at one point. You got some trauma in your background as well, when you're like as 15. At least that's what you put in the description. So
yeah, So I guess this is like where people are sometimes really quite surprised, because I'm so cheerful and everything now, and everything's like so breezy for me now. When I was growing up, I had an incredibly abusive father, and a neglectful mother. So my father's abuse was constant. He sexually assaulted me, and I don't even know when it started or when it ended. It's just a blur. I just know, and I don't even have the real memories to back it up, which is good. Like I've compartmentalized them, but I do still have the emotional feelings that come up when I get PTSD flashbacks. So if ever I have to go in for like a cervical smear test, like a pap smear test, I have 2 weeks of anxiety, and then the actual test will happen, And because it's invasive, I then have PTSD, emotional flashbacks for 2 weeks. So just one test can put me back an entire month of my life, and I'm numb, and I don't know how, I can't feel, I don't know how to, I'm less loving with my partner. I can't be intimate with my partner because I don't feel like my body is my own for a period of time, because I have this PTSD which is haunting me. And at the moment, I have cervical cancer again. So I've already had surgery once. I have cervical cancer again, and they've also discovered that I have fibroids, I have thickening of the uterine walls, and I have complex ovarian cysts in both of my ovaries. So that's even more invasive tests that they have to do. But I'm in the mindset of because that's 3 different tests that they have to do at any one time, and they want to keep monitoring me until it gets worse. And I'm in the mindset now of feeling more empowered to say, no, you either remove the organs, because I'm infertile anyway, so they can't throw the, childbearing age thing at me. I'm infertile anyway because of all these things. And my partner's had a vasectomy, like we're not having kids. And I just need them to either remove those organs so that I never have to have another test, or I need them to leave me alone for 3 years. I've just picked 3 years out of the thin air and said, if it's not so bad that you think you can leave me for 3 years, then do it. If you think it's going to be bad enough that you can't leave me for 3 years, just take it out. And I've got the support of my psychiatrist, my psychologist, and my GP to all back me up and say my PTSD is too bad, it's too destructive. Like the amount of diazepam I have to take is unreal. So my anxiety levels are so high that I can take between 12 and 20 tablets of Valium in a day, and it won't even hit the sides of my anxiety, and it doesn't make me sleepy or anything. So it's really severe. So the trauma growing up was not only inflicted on me, but inflicted on my half brothers. So it was his stepchildren and also my mother. So I used to hear him assaulting my mother in the night. And then she would work late and night shifts as a nurse, and he didn't work. So when she wasn't at home, he would assault me. So she had no idea that he was assaulting me, and I didn't want to say anything. I was so ashamed, and I was living in fear. And I never said anything to her because I knew that she was going through it too. But it's just he took turns depending on who was available in the house at any one time. And he was physically abusive as well. So he used to beat the shit out of me. And I would have to just wear baggy clothes to school to hide bruises. And he would beat the shit out of my mother, and he nearly killed her a couple of times. One time he was strangling her with her own dressing gown cord, and he was strangling her so much I thought she was going to die. And I was probably about 7 years old. It was all because she bought a bottle of gin that she wanted to save for Christmas, and he'd come home drunk because he was an alcoholic and a drug addict and a drug dealer. And he'd come home drunk, and he was desperate to know where the gin was, and she wouldn't tell him. She'd hidden it in one of the garden sheds, and she wouldn't tell him, and she was just holding on to that for dear life, and he was killing her. And I called the police. I was 7 years old. I called the police, and they showed up. But my mother was so ashamed because she was brought up in that way of, you don't show your weaknesses or anything. And my father was just so charming to everyone. He was an absolute narcissist, and he was completely charming. So when the police showed up, Police told me off for calling them. And the police said that sometimes mummies and daddies have fights, but that doesn't mean you call the police, and you don't waste police time. And I was just like, that meant I couldn't trust authority from a very early age because they couldn't save me. And then I would go to school I would like run away in the middle of the night, and I had an older best friend, and he was like 6 years older than me, that I met when I was like 13. And so he was like 19 years old, and he lived about 1.5 miles away, and I would run in the middle of the night if I was being beaten up, or like I was scared that my father was coming into my bedroom. I would just like grab my keys and I would just run, and I would show up at the end of this guy's street, and I'd just put this 10 pence coin into a proper old school phone booth, and I would call him and say, "Are you at home? Can I come in?" And he was always like, "Of course, you never have to call. You can just come in anytime." So I would rock up, and he was awesome because he would like put the kettle on and make me a cup of tea to calm me down, and then he'd get a bottle of vodka out, and then he'd pour me a drink. And then I'd crash there on the sofa that night, and he would to lend me clothes to wear to school because I left in the middle of the night with nothing. So he would lend me like baggy, if you remember, like Criminal Damage jeans, like real baggy like jeans and stuff in black, and he'd lend me just a white shirt. And I up at school, and they're like, "George, you can't wear that. That's not uniform." And I said I had to leave in the middle of the night and crash at a friend's place, and this was the only clothes I could have. And my school never did anything. So my teachers knew that shit was fucked up at home, but they never called social services. They never did anything. So they adults I couldn't trust either, because they didn't want to get their hands dirty in business. And because I was so cheerful and friendly and friends with everyone at school, and I always got A's in all of my tests and everything else, I guess they kind of just thought, well, she's coping, and they left me alone. So there was and I was part of a theatre company too, and my father would show up at a play, and he would sit there for maybe the 10 minutes of the play, or musical or whatever, because I was an actress, and he would stay there for the first 10 minutes, and then he'd go into the bar, and then he'd sit there and drink for the rest of the play. And then he would walk through the doors during the applause at the finale, having not actually seen play, and then he would go drunkenly in front of everyone at the cast party afterwards. He would drunkenly start shouting about how incredible his daughter was. She got it all from me, and she's so talented because of me, and that's why she's such a great singer, and everything like that. And so he would just do that in front of everyone and embarrass the shit out of me. But they all saw him as just being a real doting father. And then we'd walk home together, and he'd just beat the shit out of me for no reason, just because he felt like it. So one moment he's singing my praises as the most glorious child in the world in front of everyone to make him look good. And then he would just walk me home. And I remember there's one strip of long hedges that we had to walk past, and he would pin me down in a hedge and just beat me up, and just because that's how he felt. And he was he had paranoid schizophrenia because of drug and alcohol abuse. So he used to smoke a lot of weed, and he had acid flashbacks from the 60s, and so he would just have these flashbacks where he'd run around the house threatening us all because he was convinced that we were going to poison him or something, or he would just have these real delusions, and then he'd go and pass out somewhere. And then, so schizophrenia was all over the place. And he would abuse me one night, and the next day he'd buy me really expensive audio equipment because I was obsessed with music, and he'd buy me some really expensive speakers. And it was like, is this an apology, or do I accept these? And it was just a really conflicting thing for me as a kid to say, like, he would like give me this expensive equipment or buy me CDs and stuff. But it was after he'd assaulted me, or he'd done something like beaten the crap out of me the night before. And it was like a really weird, like, I never knew whether it was coming or going. But I guess like one thing that I learned from him was I instinctively learned how to read a person's face in a millisecond. I had to be able to read a face because I needed to know if he was going to blow up or if he was going to hug me. And I could sometimes tell by the way he put the key in the lock in our house. And as he turned that key, I could tell you if I was about to get a beating, I should lock my bedroom door, or if he was going to come with a gift. And it was just that experience, as horrific as it was, has actually made me an incredibly good management consultant, because I can be in a board meeting and I can tell if somebody's unhappy, or I can be giving a keynote speech to 300 people and I can tell if somebody's engaged or not at 300 people, because I'm just running my anxiety test like doing a millisecond at a time to all the people in the room, scanning the room constantly, and like I'm tailoring what I'm saying and tailoring the work that I'm doing based on a room of 300 people at a time. So that's like, if I'm going to say there was any benefit to that shit ton of abuse, it would be that I've now learned how to read a room, and I'm a much better consultant as a result of that.
Wow. Well, first of all, I'm sorry that you had to experience that and go through that. No child should have to endure anything like that, and the adults in your life, all of them, including the ones that were supposed to help you, abandoned you. And that had to have been hard. So my heart goes out to you, as well as Jordan says the same thing. And if anybody's watching this, and if you need to take a moment to kind of gather yourselves, because that was difficult to listen to. That was tough, man. I've got tears in my eyes almost, because of, I can't imagine that. Like when I think of my own daughter, like I would never do anything like that. Like that never even crosses my mind.
Well, that's testament to you. That's how it should be.
So I'm sorry that you had to go through that. And you're really strong. And yeah. Thank you for sharing that, because I know it wasn't easy. Because if it was this difficult for me to listen to it, I can't imagine what it was like to go through it and then have to tell it. So thank you.
Well, it's weird. I'm kind of just accepting of it now. Like, I'm like, so I, was homeless at 15 because I couldn't be in that house anymore. So, and by homeless, I mean the hidden homeless, the people that are couch surfing and sleeping in friends' cars and stuff. And it was still safer. And then, but I was also from the age of 13, because I had these older friends. They all thought I was older. Well, like one of them knew my real age, but the rest of them all thought I was 18. So I was going to nightclubs, and this is where like my mother just didn't like seem to care. So like she knew I was going to nightclubs when I was 13 years old, and she would do my hair. And she would do my hair knowing well that I was going to a nightclub of all these older people, and I wouldn't come home until 6 a.m. And then I would just come home, I'd get 1 hour's sleep, and then I'd take a shower and then go to school. And I was doing that when I was 13 years old. And I was spending most nights, I was promiscuous at this point. So this is when I was like using sexuality to go home with guys and girls. And I was like, it was safer for me to go home with a stranger than it was for me to go home. So I would just go home with a stranger. I would sit with them because I thought that's what I had to do. And it's not like I enjoyed it. It's a performance. It was performance for me. And then I would stay awake all night. So they would fall asleep, everything would be fine. I couldn't sleep next to another person. I was never felt safe enough. So I would get up and I would go and like clean their kitchen and like do random shit like that because I just needed to entertain myself whilst they were sleeping and I was waiting for the first home. And I was using sex as a way of staying away from my own home. And like none of these people were ever bad to me. They were all good to me. And I feel bad because in theory they were committing like crimes because they were sleeping with me, but they had no idea. They thought I was like 18, 19, 20 when I was like 13, 14, 15. And I'd convinced them that I was at university studying political history because I knew a lot about history. And so I would convince them that's what I was doing, and they believed me. And like, yeah, I feel guilty for like they unwittingly committed crimes, but they were also saving me from being home. But my mother didn't even say a thing about the fact that I wouldn't come home at night. It wasn't even an issue. Like she knew I was going out clubbing, and then I'd come at 6 a.m, like having walked home from a nightclub, and I'd walked home like 6-7 miles, and like just rocked up at home, and then got changed and went to school. And so I'd get like an hour's sleep, and that was like a regular occurrence for me. And then I would just rest, like on a Sunday, I would just kind of sleep on Sundays. That my anxiety levels are so high, and I had undiagnosed ADHD, and undiagnosed bipolar. So I was just manic or depressed, and either way I was faking it. So if I was manic, I was literally manic, and I was all over, and like people adored me in the nightclubs because I would dance all night, and I was super fun and fun loving, and I was like friendly to the point where a company hired me to be their like promo girl, or like I think my stepdaughter called it the vibe girl. So basically it was my job to kind of bring up the mood of the room and get people up dancing and stuff like that. So I was hired by a company to do that in the clubs. And one guy who hired me was super awesome, and he would take me from my hometown, which is Brighton on the south coast of England, and then he'd me up to his nightclubs to work in London. And so I'd go up London a couple of nights a week, and then he'd drive me home afterwards. But on the drive home, knowing that I was like homeless, or when I actually got an apartment at 16, he would drive me home and he would stop to get petrol, gas, whatever you call it. He would stop to get that in the middle of the night. And he would then take me to the grocery store, the 24-hour grocery store, and he would buy my groceries for the week. And so he was really awesome. So he knew that things were dire for me. He would pay me to be the vibe girl, and then everyone else in the car was passed out because I got too drunk, whereas I couldn't sleep next to strangers. So I was always awake with him and in the front of the car, keeping him awake whilst driving. So he would take me in and buy me my week's groceries and stuff like that, which was just there were some people that cared for me and did nice things. And that was in the thing world, which I shouldn't even have been allowed in until I was 18. Yet there I was working in nightclubs from the age of 14 years old. But it was safe for me. It was awesome. And I was earning money and getting to just do what I love anyway. But then because I'm bipolar, I would also go into depression, but I would just fake the mania. So just fake happiness, because that's what people expected of me, was to be the happy vibe girl. So I would take sweets to people in the nightclubs and stuff, or in Halloween, I would dress up as a fairy and throw glitter on people and just generally make people feel good. And that made me feel good, giving them a good night. But, actually deep down, I was just really depressed, and I had no way of externalizing that depression to anyone. It was just, I've always had to hide my emotions. And it wasn't until I was in my 30s that I was diagnosed with bipolar, and they medicated me. And I found out that I had emotions beyond mania and depression. I'd been faking it my whole life. I'd been faking happy. I'd been faking sad. But for the first time, I actually felt happiness and sadness in a way that other people feel happiness, sadness. And I had no idea what I'd been missing out on for 30 years of my life. I had no idea that there was something beyond mania and depression. And when I talk about when I was diagnosed with bipolar and they medicated me, it gave me all the colors of the rainbow. Before, it was red and violet, and that they were my extremes, and that was all I knew. But then the lithium gave me all the colors of the rainbow, and that was incredible. And then a few years later, I got diagnosed with ADHD, and I got put on dexamphetamine. And suddenly that changed everything again, because I not only felt the colors of the rainbow, but I could articulate them. So for the first, it took me until I was about 35 years old, 34, 35, before I was actually able to have the emotions that other people felt and be able to talk about them in a meaningful way, which meant that therapy got easier, because I could say, I felt genuinely happy today, and this is why I felt happy, and this is what happiness felt like for me. And I'd never had that before. It was just the extremities, and I was just faking. I was using so much energy, faking being happy all the time, at school, at theatre, at the clubs. I was just faking it, and because that's what people expected of me. And I needed to hide what was happening at home. So as far as everyone was concerned, I was just this fun-loving girl living a fun-loving life, and all of my high school friends were envious of me because I was going clubbing, and because I had 21-year-old guys coming to pick me up from school in their cars and stuff, and they were the cool guys. They would pick up from school to take me to go get changed and hang out and go clubbing. And so my friends at school were all like, "Oh, wow, your life amazing," and stuff. And they had no idea what the hell I was going through at home and why I was living a potentially dangerous life with all these older guys. That it was just, they thought there I was, this happy, lucky person who was living the best life, and they were all super jealous of me.
Yeah.
And yeah, and there's nothing for them to be jealous of. Like I didn't enjoy sex until I was 17. I didn't actually, like, I was doing it and putting on a great performance, had a reputation, but it wasn't until I had a relationship with someone and I felt actually safe with him when I was 17 that I thought to myself one day, whoa, is this what it's supposed to be like? And it occurred to me that it's the first time that I would enjoy it for myself. Like, sex was taken away from me at an early age, and I don't even know when it was taken from me. And then I was giving it away for sanctuary. And then it wasn't until I was new and safe with a friend that I felt something and I enjoyed something, and I asked him for what I wanted for a change instead of me always giving up what they wanted. And I was always the one who was like the perfect, like, one night stand, because I was always like, what do you want? And I would give them exactly what they wanted, and then I would leave in the morning before they woke up and stuff. So I was the perfect nightstand for all these people. I didn't want anything from them. And yeah, it was just, I never realized that I was allowed to enjoy sex until I was 17, by which point I'd been having sex against my will for like over 10 years.
Yeah, man, that's well, I mean, you were you were trying to survive for one, and then also you were using that as a tool to, you know, find shelter or safety, you know, whatever it is that you needed to do with it. So yeah, that's tough, man. Like I said, man, my heart goes out to you. I had no idea, you know, like, because I talk to you and hear you almost every night in Clubhouse. You know, when we go in there, and you know, we're just all having a good time, and you know, talking and connecting and joking around, and you know, and I think that that's part of the amazing part of Clubhouse is that, you know, you can connect on a deeper level with people, and just getting to know the stories. You know, Tanner's, you know, doing his fireside chats. You know, I interview people as well, and the real stories behind, you know, who the personalities are. And you know, I really do appreciate your transparency and your ability to be honest, and tell your story, you know, even though how hard it is. And you know, I do the same thing, and so I really respect you, and I respect, you know, what you're doing, and being courageous enough to tell a story that could potentially save somebody's life who could be listening to this.
Well, I respect you and your transparency. I think that what you're doing here with the podcast is awesome, like giving a voice to people to share this stuff. But yeah, I guess like I did go through all of that, and I have come out at the other end. It's taken me a long road, but I've come out the other end with this ability to live a more successful life. And like I did seek, like when I got older, I did seek help with therapy, and I did seek help with medication, and that was probably like something that well, it definitely saved me, because I was suicidal when I was young. I was also anorexic, partly because of my mother. So she had this perfection complex, and everything had to be seen as being perfect, even though everything was awful. And I was probably like about 8 years old when I was trying on a dress, and I'm an hourglass figure. So I've got a little waist, but I've got wider hip, which I love now, but I hated back then because it was fashionable to be straight, up and down, and like androgynous. But and my mother is straight up and down, but her mother was an hourglass, so I look like her mother. I never met her; she passed before I was born. And I was in this clothes shop, and I was trying on this dress, and it was kind of meant for people who were straight up and down. And I said to my mother, like, did I inherit these hips from you? And she said, I was never that fat when I was your age. And I was like, oh, I must be fat then. I wasn't fat. Looking back, I was fat. I was a dancer, and I was in theatre. I was running around. I was anxious, so I was thin, and I was vegetarian and everything. And so I just became anorexic and bulimic, like overnight. So she would make food for me, and we all hated each other in the house. So when dinner was made, everyone went and sat in their own bedrooms to eat. So there was no sitting around the table or anything like that. And that meant that I was able to take my food and scrape food out of my window, and onto the little roof that was underneath my window, and scrape my food out there. And then as soon as it started to smell really bad, I would get a kettle of hot water, of boiling water, and I would pour the boiling water so that all the food would go into the gutter, and then it would disappear because I just wouldn't eat. When I was at school, I would hide not eating by taking multivitamins and telling my friends that I couldn't eat because I was a dancer. So I was only allowed to eat 2 meals a day, and so I wasn't allowed to eat lunch. And that was just how I got away with not eating at school. And if I did eat, I felt guilty, and I ended up like vomiting it up because my stomach couldn't take it. And also I felt like shame around eating. And I thought that if I made myself really unattractive, like really skinny, that maybe he wouldn't touch me anymore. And it didn't work. It actually just pronounced my body, even the shape of my body, even more. And so like as I hit puberty, and I was like overweight and wearing baggy clothes all the time, it just made it more prominent that you could see breasts because I was so skinny. And so that would just give him more incentive to abuse me, because he was like, well, you're a woman now. And it's like it gave him an excuse for that. Before I was a child, but now I'm a woman, and my body was underweight, and it wasn't until I was like more comfortable when I was like steam, and like I was at these places and they would feed me, that I actually had meat on my bones again, and I was actually an okay size. I was unhappy with it. Like, I've got body dysmorphia, I still do now, and I was unhappy with it. But like I had friends telling me that I looked so much better when I wasn't gaunt and skinny, and so I was like, okay, maybe if they think I look better, that's good, but it still makes it more of a danger at home. And just it was like a tightrope, just trying to navigate my weight. And then in my 20s, I wanted to be less active, and I ended up becoming obese. And I was like a size, I think US size like 24. And then I became obese, and I was married, and I was unhappy, and I was bored and stuff. And then it was when I met my new partner, I changed my diet, moved to Australia, changed my diet to be really healthy, and I ended up losing 135 pounds, which is like over 60 kilos. And I'm down to a really healthy weight now. And I still have body dysmorphia. I still like look at my body and I'm unhappy with it. But navigating that with like weighing myself properly and like measuring my self properly around my waist and things like that, and just trying to make sure that I'm healthy. My partner won't let me be unhealthy. Like, I lost a bit too much weight. He was just like, no, you can't do that. And he's like being the best support that I could have possibly imagined.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. That's amazing. And you're beautiful. You know, you're a beautiful woman and you're a beautiful soul. And, you know, I'm really happy that we're friends and that we've made acquaintances. And, you know, I struggle with weight too. And, you know, there's been times when I would, you know, when I was an abusive person, you know, I would lash out at my ex for her weight, but it was really when I really started looking at it and dissecting it, it was really me not liking who I was, projecting it onto her because of how I felt about myself. So, you know, it's the mind is crazy, and the way we do the things that we do and how things get manipulated in our head and twisted around because of things that we've been through or just thoughts that get put in there, you know, from wherever.
Absolutely.
Jordan has a question. Oh, go ahead.
No, it's good.
All right, Jordan has a question. He says, you don't have to answer this, and I don't know the right answer, but I am wondering, have you forgiven him, your father? I'm assuming that's who he's talking about. Was that part of the healing process?
So that's actually a really beautiful question, Jordan. So thank you for asking me. I have not forgiven him, but I have come to a period of acceptance of what happened to me, and I know it was not my fault. And I ran away when I was 17. I moved 250 miles away from my hometown. I disappeared and I didn't tell them where I was going. And I wanted to stay hidden. So I disappeared, and I spent 30 years living in a different city. And then I moved to Australia. And I went on this self kind of course thing. And I came to accept my mother for who she was. So I hadn't been to her for 5 years because she was she never showed love or affection, and she was really distant when it came to me discussing my disabilities and mental health and everything else. And I couldn't deal with her and I actually just stopped talking to her for 5 years. I went on this self-help course and I contacted her and I just said, look, I accept you for you are. Like, she's never said, I love you. She doesn't hug me. She's never been affectionate. And I was desperate for a mum, but she's always been a mother, like never been a mum or mummy. She's mother. But I've come to accept her who she was. I contacted her and now she's in my life and when we FaceTime regularly, and I've just accepted who she is as a person. Now with my father, I actually did seek him out after like 16, 17 years. I finally found him. It took me about a year, but I finally found him. And I spoke to him and like I called him up. I got his phone number from my step brother. And I got his phone number and I called him and I just said it was me. And his instinct was to lay into me for 10 minutes. And I just listened to him. My partner sat next to me and he was like crying And he just laid into me for 10 minutes about what a horrible person I was. Because I'd threatened to take him to court. I was 18, but I never did it. I never got the nerve. So he must have thought it was going to be about that. And then I just said to him, I think you'll agree we all went through hell. So then he went, okay, and started talking about for 10 minutes about how incredible his new life was, his wife and her kids and this, that, and the other, and how one of them's a millionaire and this, that, and the other. And I just went, okay, I'm really happy for you. I'm glad you have that in your life. And then he was like, again, taken aback when he realized that I wasn't there to berate him. And then he spent the next 10 minutes in tears talking about how amazing I was and not having me in his life and everything else. And he was in tears and stuff. And I said, I would like to try having a relationship with you, because I hadn't forgiven him, but I had accepted. And I just decided that I can't be held hostage by him anymore. So I started speaking to him on the phone, and he's old, he's in his 70s, speaking to him on the phone. And then I went back to the UK to visit people, and I organized to visit him. And I walked up to him and I gave him a hug. And he was like taken aback, and so was my stepmother, and they were all taken aback. And my partner was like shocked, because I just walked straight in to his house and gave him a hug and sat down next to him and started talking about the nice parts of my childhood, music and stuff. Started talking about the nice parts of my childhood. And I decided there and then that I was drawing a line and I was starting anew, because if he's a new person, then we can start a new relationship and I can have a father. So I tried that, and we met up a couple of times, and we spoke on the phone when I came back to Australia. And then he was still being a narcissistic twat over dinner with my partner, but my partner just held my hand under the table, like he knew that he was just trying to pop show. So and I let it slide. But then I came back to Australia. It was after about 7 months of having him in my life. He called me, and his wife was away, and his wife used to be in the Colombian military, so she kept in line, but she was away visiting family. So he was on his own, and he called me, and I was at work at the time because of time differences, and he called me, and I was like, oh gosh, I wonder what he's calling me for. I hope it's not an emergency. And I answered the phone, and immediately I knew he'd been drinking whiskey, because when he drinks beer, he's friendly, and when he drinks whiskey, he is not. And I know that from my childhood. So he called and started to berate me, calling me a greedy, selfish bitch. And I said, well, what have I possibly done to deserve this? And he said, you came over and you saw me, and you couldn't even throw your old man a couple of grand. And I was like, pardon? And he was like, you'd heard me. You come over and you've got this great life, and you couldn't even throw your old man a couple of grand, you greedy little selfish bitch. And I said, well, I thought I had money, and why would I give you money? Even if I had the money, why would I give you money? And he's just like, you always were greedy and selfish and everything else. And you just went, he carried on. I wouldn't let it slide. I said, no, why do you think you deserve my money? For all this time, etc. And I held him on the phone, and I was late for a board meeting, but I held him on the phone until he showed his true colors seriously, and he just went, fuck you, you fucking bitch, get out of fucking life. I don't want you, I don't need you, I don't need your fucking money, stay away from me, etc. And I was like, well, if that's the way you feel, I accept. And so I just accepted that he wanted to cut me out of his life. Then I went into the board meeting, and I could see him trying to call me like another 5 or 6 times. And I had to take my phone to the table, and I texted my stepmother, and I said, he's been drinking whiskey. This is what he's just done. It's what he's just said to me. And I texted my stepbrother, who lived nearby, and I said to him what had happened. And he said, he was so apologetic, it was unreal. And I was like, you don't need to apologize. This is just who he is with me. And I never told them what he did to me. I always, because I drew that line, I never thought it was not my story to tell. It wasn't fair to tell them that the person they've been living with is that kind of person. So I texted my stepbrother, and he said he was going to go and delete my number from his phone so he can't call me anymore. And I said, that would be great. Thank you. So now I am complete. I am whole and complete, because I stepped up and I gave him every opportunity to be in my life, and he is the one that threw it away. And it was on his terms. He self-selected himself out of my life. So although I can't forgive him for what he's done, I've accepted what he's done, and I'm complete in myself with what happened to me. And apart from the uncontrollable PTSD, like, I feel like I can share my story openly now, and I don't feel shame or guilt, and I can do podcasts like this and be open about it, and I don't cry. I don't feel anything about it anymore. I'm just complete with it. So I hope that was a good answer to your question, Jordan.
Yeah, that was an amazing answer. And I'm the one that cries. It seems like I'm crying way more lately than anything else. But I'm just, honestly, it's just having a daughter and knowing like what they need in their life and the kind of love that they need and support, and being like, I hug my kids so much. Like, it's like almost anytime it's almost like I'm overcompensating, because a little bit about my story, and that I have a daughter that I lost when I was younger. I mean, she's in my life now, but I mean, I had abandoned her at one point, and so it's like I was almost trying to overcompensate with this daughter because of the mistakes I'd made with the last one. And so it's like, God, I feel bad for you, Red. Your old man's trying to compensate and over love you because of, the situation in the past. So,
Well, I do that. I have stepdaughters, and they were 12 and 15 when I met them. And I'm really in their life, and they're in their 20s now. And one of them has given me a granddaughter, which is nuts. And I am completely affectionate and loving, but I'm authentic with it. So I'm not overcompensating for anything. I have just authentic, unconditional love for these young women. And I respect them and their life decisions, and I support them, and they come to me for advice. And I love the fact that I have that and that relationship with them, because being a stepmother is a really difficult position to be in of teenage girls. Like, are you trying to take over from my mom? Are you taking my dad away? And all that kind of stuff could have happened. But we have just had although we had our ups and downs when they were teenagers and we're all living together, and like I wanted them to tidy rooms and stuff like that. It was just I'm now in a position where I have the most incredible relationship with these two young women that even my partner and I, we've been together 8 years, but even if my partner and I weren't together anymore, I would still have this relationship with his children and granddaughter. Like that's just a given, because I've built my own relationship with them, and I can't imagine being anything like my parents were. Like, I tell them that I love them, and we hug, and they tell me that they love me, and I can't imagine ever abusing or assaulting or hurting them in any way. But like, something that is sad is knowing that mental health runs in my family and other health problems run in my family, and knowing the fact that my mother went through the cycle of she was abused by her father, and then she ended up marrying somebody that abused his daughter and stuff, like I decided at an early age that I was never going to have children because I never wanted to continue that cycle. So I drew a line and said, I'm never having children. And I just decided then, and I've carried that through, and I don't have children, but I don't need to now. Like, I've got stepkids, which is great, and I don't have a desire or a need to have kids, which is awesome. But like, it's just really sad that at an early age I thought I can't do what I can't possibly continue the cycle just in case, and I can't pass on these genetics just in case. So I decided when I was about 11 that I was never going to have kids, and I carried on my whole life. And then I became what I call a foster girlfriend. So I would go out with boys until they found their forever home. So pretty much all of the boyfriends I've had since I was 17, or even my ex-husband counts, has the next person they've been with has been their wife or mother of their child. And so like I fostered them and made them good people, and then I've passed them over to somebody else to do the living with, and to do the kid and the marriage and everything. So yeah, I'm a foster girlfriend. But I'm
that's an interesting way of putting it. I didn't mean to laugh at that. I got a chuckle because I'm like, that's a.
No, it's funny. It's supposed to be funny. Don't worry about it. It's supposed to be like, I'm supposed to be a funny person. Don't worry about it. Like, yeah. So it is funny. I'm hoping it's not the case with my partner now, because like he is 19 years older than me. We've got stepkids. I've got stepkids with him and everything. And I have the healthiest relationship I've ever had in my life. Like, the most authentic. He will call me out on my bullshit in a way that other people haven't. And he's helped me through my mental health struggles, and he's helped me with suicidal thoughts and ideations and stuff. And he's helped me through a huge amount, to the point where we're now in the most stable that we've ever been. And the 8 years, it's just been incredible. So I'm very lucky that I've settled down with somebody who is also wants to live life to the fullest. So we want to live all over the world. We want to do all these crazy things, and we're doing it. We're both entrepreneurs, and we like live in a great apartment because we don't want to own anything. So we only rent now, because if you own the house, you settle down, and we don't want to do that. So we've committed ourselves renting for the rest of our lives, so we can rent in different parts of the country or the world and live. Like, the only commitment I've truly got is I've got 2 guinea pigs. So they have to come with me. But it's just, I've got this like incredible like relationship now, and at a really great place with my mental health, and like it's being well managed, and I'm comfortable sharing my story. And if it can help one person, as you say, if one person hears this and is impacted and knows that there is a light at the end of the tunnel, or they can achieve and they can look at the benefits of what they endured, because I can endure anything now, because I've already been through hell. So I can just endure literally anything. So that's a superpower that I have, is endurance. I have a superpower of reading a room, and I have these great just superpowers which have come from the life I have lived, and that if it just takes reframing things and getting the right help, and then anything's possible.
Yeah, I'm gonna pull this national sexual abuse hotline number, because it's one thing that I always I talk about a lot of these things, but sometimes I don't give calls to action, and I need to get better about that. But I didn't I knew what your story was going to be about, but I didn't know it was going to be like that. So, not that it was bad. It's just that was a lot.
Impactful, maybe.
Yes, very impactful.
Absolutely, do share it. So I think that's really important, because like getting help is, and talking to somebody is really important.
So the number on the screen right there is for the National Sexual Abuse Hotline. And, I'm sure you could probably, if you're in another country watching this, or if you're somewhere else, I'm sure you can maybe call that and they can give you resources. Where
Can I get out the Australian one, just because I'm in Australia, so people will see this?
Yep.
Is 1-800-737-732.
1-800-737
732.
7.
So that's the 1-800 respect number in Australia. So I think that's really a valuable resource as well, because I'm in Australia.
One more time. 1-800-737
732.
So 732. Oh, your numbers are different in Australia, huh?
Yeah.
AUSTIA.
We have fewer people, so we have shorter numbers.
ABUSE. So I think it's a good point to wrap it up on. We are at an hour and 11 right now. So why don't you go ahead while I'm doing this and tell everybody where they can find you. I know you did in the beginning, but if any last things that you want to direct people to, feel free to do it.
Well, there's one thing that I'd like to share, which is I've got a new website which isn't up yet, but I have the domain, and that's going to be gingergeorgiana.com, and that is going to be where I host a podcast where I interview inspiring people about stories, and I like to think of it as like Oprah with drinking wine and swore a bit. Like that's kind of like my jam. So I'll be interviewing gold medal winning Paralympians. I have an ex-stripper who's now in the industry. I've got women's rights activists for abortion campaigning, and then drag queens and all sorts. So it will be interesting. There'll be the Ginger Georgiana podcast. And it's on all my socials. So if you follow me on Clubhouse, or if you follow me on Twitter, Instagram, Pinterest, it's all Ginger Georgiana. And so that would be awesome if people followed me on there. And then when I know we're live streaming, but by in the next couple of weeks, the website will be up, and it will have not only the cast, but it will also have details of the stories I can tell for people at mental health conferences, and people at sexual abuse conferences and things like that. I'll be able to share my story. So georgiana.com will have my story on there, but it will also have a link to the podcast. So yeah.
Awesome. And then you can also find Georgiana if you're on Clubhouse, because Jordan is at Ginger Georgiana. And if you're not on Clubhouse, you need to get on there, because it's definitely the place to be right now. And there's a lot of good stuff going on there, a lot of good connections and organic growth for whatever it is that you're doing. And in your,
it's how we met as well. So we met through Clubhouse, and that's why I was able to share my story with you today. So thank you.
You're welcome. And then Jordan also had a final comment for you. And Jordan was on my show as well. He's an author of a book called One Hit Away. And he struggled with heroin addiction and got himself out of that, through treatment and everything else. And now he's thriving and successful and, moving on with his life. So thanks, Jordan, for being a viewer and supporter of the show. I definitely appreciate that. And so he says, thank you for sharing. This was a powerful podcast, and you are incredibly strong. And he is correct. You are very strong.
That's very kind. I just felt like I was very unlucky, and I've come out the other end, so that's good. But I suppose, yeah, there is strength in being able to share the story, and also strength in coming out the other side and living a successful life despite everything that was thrown my way.
Yep, absolutely, Georgiana. I definitely want to thank you, and I appreciate your honesty and your transparency. And if you are struggling with something like this, or this hits you in a way that maybe you think that you need to call this number, this is the United States National Sexual Abuse Hotline, and this one down here is the one for Australia. So, get help. There is help. Contact somebody. Don't ever feel like you can't come forward and get some sort of reprieve or help for this. I mean, I've never been in this situation, but I also know that, the tactics that are used sometimes you just have to see past that and take that risk and come forward and let people help you, because
never too late. It's never too late to come forward. I think that's really important to note. Like, even if you've suppressed memories or anything, it's never too late to talk to see. I learned that.
Yeah, and when you talk about it and you start to bring that out there and talk to professionals, or like in mine and Georgiana's case, with my abusive past, and I talk about it and she's talking about it, you take the power away from it that it has over you and your life, and being able to move forward and thriving and becoming a successful or not even successful, just becoming the person that you were supposed to be.
Absolutely. I think I'm incredibly proud of who I've become. So I think that's if that gives anyone any inspiration to organize themselves in coming forward about something, or at least coming and seeking help in any way, whenever that occurs for them, just know that you can end up being really happy with the person that you are. And really happy with the life that you're living. So that's me. That's where I am.
Well, thank you. And I'm going to go ahead and put you down into the green room again, and I'm going to take us out of here. And once again, I appreciate everything that you do and everything that you shared. You are a beautiful person and very strong, and an inspiration to me as well. So I appreciate you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Wow. That was a story. Woo. And it got me, definitely. And like I said, I've been crying quite a bit lately, just because, just life is good. And sometimes, for me, I don't know how to accept that, because I'm so used to life being not good from my past. So, I'm learning a lot, and also learning how to live in my success instead of trying to destroy it and knock the house down, because I'm so used to being in chaos. So I definitely loved everything that she had to say, and I appreciate her friendship, and give her a follow. If you check her out on her what she's doing over on her Clubhouse, her the podcast that she's got, and also the website that she's going to be having coming up soon. So go follow her and check her out. She's doing some great things. And I hope you enjoyed the broadcast. And I will be having one more tomorrow at 6 p.m. as well, with Celeste Resch. And we're going to be talking about some more abuse and an abusive relationship that she was in. And so Jordan, thank you. I appreciate it. Great show. I definitely love the support that you give the show. So appreciate you. And until next time, or tomorrow, stay 100 or keep it 100 and stay true to yourself, man, because there's no better way to be.
You've been listening to the Nowhere to Go But Up podcast. Sean is a single dad, a union blue-collar guy, and he spent time in federal and state prison for drug trafficking and fraud. When he was released from prison in 2006, all he had was the clothes on his back, a bag of mail, and some paperwork. Since then, he's turned his life around and shares the struggles and successes on this podcast. We hope you enjoyed the show, and we hope you were moved. To connect to the show, book a guest spot. For merch, Patreon, PayPal, and social media links, go to linktr.ee/nowhere to go but up. On Instagram at Nowhere to Go But Up Now. On Twitter at But Up Now. On the YouTube channel at Nowhere to Go But Up Podcast. See you next time.